We're going to talk about all things relationships in this episode. All the things that women complain about that they want from men but don't seem to be getting. This is Kaz Naidoo, life and relationship coach, the founder of the Love Evolution, where we are focused on bringing you more love, more joy, and more freedom. And today I have the privilege and the honor of chatting with Dr. Ray Doktor, and he is a speaker, an author, a best-selling author, and also a life and relationship coach. So this should be quite an interesting conversation. Welcome, Dr. Ray.
It's good to meet you. I'm very interested in what you have to say also because you said I was like a male version of you.
Yes, everything of yours that I looked at, I said, oh, but I say that, I say that, I do that. It was really interesting to find that male version. So that's the kind of conversation that I want to have today. Um, Ray, usually when I come across coaches that I can see are really good at what they do, most of the time it's because at some point in your life you've had the trauma, you've had the challenges, and you get to a point where you realize that this is the work you want to do, what you want to share with the world. So what's your backstory? Why do you do what you do?
Well, my backstory, like many of us, I experienced, I would say, vicarious PTSD from my parents to I was a perfectionist to, I wanted to have people respect me and have an attractive woman next to me and all these things I've been taught by our society that makes you feel complete and whole. And for most of us, if we don't achieve that, we feel emptiness, or even if we do achieve that, we still feel like this emptiness. I mean, many of us have sat right next to a person in the car, and they're driving next to us. I mean, meaning they're sitting next to us, and we feel like this disconnect or emptiness. So in my life, I noticed myself attempting to fulfill something, but by going outside of myself. And, that has led, I'm giving you the short story, to health issues, to emotional issues, to where it brought me to my knees to really look within. So even though I call myself a life and relationship coach, it's not about just fixing a person's, say, relationship with their spouse. It's really about the relationship with him or herself. And so that's where my work stems from, because I have achieved a lot of those things that, say, the typical man from my generation would hope to achieve, accomplish. And yet I found myself, why am I drinking too much? To why am I thinking that there's some other woman better than the one I'm with? And it really brought me to that kind of authentic realization that it's really my inner thoughts. It's really my inner landscape. And if I don't change this, then I'm just going to continue to feel this way. It's just going to be a different person with a different name. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think that is of us. Say we initially look outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
What can I fix? What can I change? What can I do differently? And then
Mhm.
when that point where we realize that the change is actually an inner journey. And as we focus there and shift within, then the outside automatically also starts to shift. Um, I want to read this, which is something you wrote. The real crisis isn't toxic masculinity, it's the absence of healthy masculinity. And when I read that line, it was like, it just went off in my head. Can you expand on that? Because that is exactly what I believe that's happening in the world today.
Yeah, so there's this association to men being violent, and that act of, say, whether it's perpetrating a woman or shooting a gun or yelling, as masculinity, when it's actually the absence of it. And what I mean is that truly healthy masculinity, and if you were to connect us to the neutral characteristics of yang, like Chinese medicine, it would say that that healthy masculinity, or just say masculinity in general, is more the stillness, the container. It is being more grounded. It is being the witness. A great way to see this from maybe even an outdated paradigm is that it still happens now, but you'll notice that when you go to a party, that when there's music playing, if a person, whether it's man or a woman, and men are becoming more androgynous now, but back in the day, you would typically see more of the women in their feminine dance, and they start moving. They could be even in an elevator and they hear a beat. They're moving around. They don't care about the structure or whether or not it's appropriate. They're just feeling it in their heart. And whereas the men they're watching, they're more observing, they're more, and so I also see when we have children that what makes a child feel safe, whether it's a man or a woman, is that they know their mother or father is watching them. So even women who are protecting on a playground, in that moment, they're also in their masculine. It's the observer, it's the witness, it's the boundary. And so children feel safer when they know that they can feel their parents' eye on them, whether it's a man or a woman. So a healthy man would not go into rage. A healthy masculine man might feel that emotion, which is, we can say, the feminine. We can say it's the movement. It's that now expression, but have some practice to integrate it, take pause, and respond in a healthier way. And that's the healthy masculine. That's why I wrote that, is because there's this negative association to men acting out, and as if that's even masculinity itself, when I don't believe it is. It's a man who's immature, who's not integrated in his body. And so therefore he throws a tantrum. He reacts. And yes, we primarily see more men doing this, more men moving to aggression, because also there's a part of their brain where they have more of the propensity to do that, to move into action. But in a healthy way, that would also mean that if a man is grounded, he can protect. Doesn't mean that a woman cannot do it for herself. It doesn't mean that a woman is helpless. But what I'm trying to say is that we actually have denser bones. There's something about the biology of a healthy man that somehow can move into action while people are still bleeding. And what I mean by that, as an example, because I'm in a partnership, is that it happened with my girlfriend, and she's a coach, but she notices those tendencies to move into compassion and connection, which is great. But also she might bypass the future and the lessons that could be learned. And I was at her house, and a little boy showed up to ask for her son. And her son wasn't there. Her son was at a birthday party or something. And he just asked, "Is so-and-so here?" We said, "No." And, we were smiling. He just turned away and walked away, like absolutely no manners. And I said to her, and I noticed that a lot with where I live, that the kids here lack manners. They lack eye contact. And I said, did you notice that? Like, he just walked away. And she immediately said, "Well, he's shy." And I said, and he could be shy and be polite. He could be shy and have manners. He could be shy and still be able to communicate in a way that's respectful. And she said, "You're right, because he has a younger brother who's is in the same household and who's more polite and so forth." I said, "Yes." And she looked at that like, yeah, I guess I wanted to protect the children, that I just connected to his softness and innocence. I said, well, I did too, but what I connected to as a masculine man and known what's important for men to really lead in the world is that how people perceive you as everything. Your eye contact, your presence is everything. And I know that when a young boy, a teenage boy, and even young man cannot approach a woman with confidence, he will feel that pain to where if he can't be confident on that job interview and does not get the job, he will feel that pain. If for whatever reason, when he shows up and people don't trust him and he's not able to say attract or get what he wants, he will feel this pain. So for me, when I said that in that moment, it wasn't to call him out or to judge him. It's saying that I, as a masculine present father, would want to connect to him, but I would also want to show him ways in which that can help him be better received. So I'm thinking about not only this now moment, but the future of all men.
Yeah. The way I see the masculine and feminine is the masculine is the riverbed, which provides the safety, the structure. It holds the feminine energy, which is the water that flows through. That's
Yeah,
the movement. Yeah. And
exactly.
yeah. And what I notice today is that the majority of women that are in corporate or running their own businesses have dominant masculine energy because all day, we're in this leadership roles, we're making decisions, we're taking action, we're providing the support. So when it comes to relationships, I find that woman that has a dominant masculine energy tends to push away a man who's in his masculine. It's like two positives of a magnet that pushes away rather than the polarity of a positive and negative that will attract. Is that your experience dealing with women?
Yes, but before I answer that, I wanted to agree with you about that description you use. It's funny, we do share the exact description. I talk about masculinity being the train tracks and the feminine being the train. And if you
Okay.
don't have that map or direction, the train gets lost.
Yes.
And because there's a lot of lost men who've lost that confidence or sense of direction, women are taken over. I think it's a compensation and it creates stress in their bodies. And therefore, if a woman, for example, this you said that a lot of women are that you meet, and I see it. I'm in agreement. I used to lead women's groups as a man in early 2000 up to about 2010, and they trusted me. They trusted my guidance. And all those, say, boss babes, CEOs, or entrepreneurial type of women, all of them truly still had a feminine essence. All of them, if
Yeah.
they were in presence of a strong man, would drop into that because for them, yes, they don't need your money. Yes, they don't need your permission for anything. I mean, we can go as far as they don't need your sperm because, they can figure that out or whatever. And what they want is a man to be able to show up in the areas in which they're not as strong or show up in the areas that's the most important to them. So, as an example, if she had her own career and she was in her masculine all day long, when she comes home or if she works from home and she's in the presence with her man, she doesn't want to like have to mother him or take over things. In fact, she would love it if he were able to pour make a bubble bath, maybe light a candle, play some music, and she would just drop into that space of being feminine. But if he's not able to contain his own emotions, if he's not able to keep to his commitments, if he's forgetful and he doesn't keep with the agreements with, say, such as what they have provided for the children, she can't trust. So when she comes home from work, she is still moving into that masculine mode because she doesn't trust him. And she might have a really good reason to not trust him. But what also happens is that this is what has showed up in couples coaching. And that is where sometimes it's gone on for so long, even if the man is trying to show up, she still doesn't trust him. So he's frustrated because he's trying to now lean in. That happens. But then there's also where she says, but we've had this agreement. We've talked about this. We've spoken about this to three other therapists, and you keep going to the same excuses. You won't work on yourself. Therefore, that's why I'm in my masculine. And then there's some women who are so far into survival that that's their identity. And to lose that would make them feel helpless, like they felt when they were growing up in an abusive home with a father who was an alcoholic and a mother who acted helpless. Like, in other words, I've worked with women who, just to survive, they kind of push down those emotions to, they looked at their mom as being weak, and they said to themselves, I am not going to be dependent on a man. I'm going to make my own money. But those women typically are alone a lot, or they have casual relationships that are not, fulfilling. So there's many women out there with kind of a different story, but I hope these 3 points of these kind of descriptions kind of can fit what I was, like the woman you're talking about.
It's interesting you say that because, globally, when it comes to personal development, coaching programs, and things like that, it's 70% women that attend these programs.
Yes, I say the same thing. I tell people 70% of my clients are women.
Yes. So, this is the dilemma, and this is where I find women complaining a lot. It's like we're doing the work, but where are we going to find these men that are going to meet us where we are? Because they're coming across a lot of men who are in their wounded masculine energy. So not able to hold space for them or be that strong leader that they're looking for, or be that provider and provide the safety that the feminine needs to rise up, to shine, to flow. So there's the gap. How do we fix this? Because that's the question to me with, we're doing the work, but there's this gap.
Well, I may have made this joke many times, and I might do this, who knows, because I do have more interest in those who actually want to do the work, who are engaged and doing the work. And just like, say, last week, I had, I think, 3 discovery calls with 3 different men, and they liked what I had to say. It was clear that they felt as though I'd be the one to work with them. And yet, all 3 men didn't pull the trigger. They did
Wow.
not pull the trigger. So I have that experience more with men than women, where it's as if they'd rather take the short path.
Yeah.
They would rather bypass everything, and they'd rather go to pleasure before moving through the process. Meaning, and I say the process, the feminine, because when a man starts doing inner work, he's going to realize what he feels is coming from within. It's the way that he thinks about things. It's about him taking ownership that he lacks personal responsibility and accountability. You know, even in this moment, I'm pretty raw. I share everything. I put it out there that I am in an interesting situation right now. And what I mean by that is that I'm moving back east. And my partner is definitely feeling that conflict with her co-parent because he keeps breaking agreements. He will not take responsibility. It's the same story, and he's always waiting for her to kind of accommodate his needs. And he's been able. He's a handsome man. He is that kind of typical spiritual dude that maybe somehow could convince a woman that he might have some knowledge. But when it comes to his keeping his commitments, to following through, that he's not there. And her and I are dying inside for him just to say, I made a mistake. To this is an area where I fall short. You know what I mean? Even like his last weekend before we move with, there's with her son, and he's supposed to whatever create arrangements. He double booked on that weekend where he was supposed to go on a camping trip with his son. and he's making it about her. You know, like I cannot believe that like I can't see him an extra time, but why should she adjust her schedule when he made mistakes? He just won't own it. And it's because he's feeling himself. He's feeling his own shame. He's feeling his own disappointment. He's feeling his own embarrassment. And I know some people could be watching this going, how could you speak for him? Well, I'm a man. I've worked with men like this. And when they get real, that's what it is. It's why men get defensive. It's why they make excuses. That's why they go, well, you did this, because they can't handle the truth. And they can't, it's very difficult for them to take personal responsibility and say, I was wrong. Because if they say I was wrong or I made a mistake, they think women will think that they're weak. They think women will go, I don't want to be with you. In fact, it's the opposite. Women will go, oh, shit, finally, now I have something real. Now I have something I can work with, and let's go from here. But so many men are guarded, and they think that they have to be something that they're not, and what women want is transparency. Like these strong women, such as yourself, like you can work with a straight shooter or a transparent man. Like, while you don't want a man to say, if you're starting to date a woman, like date a man, and he were to say to you, I am not that committed right now. I want to see a couple different women. That would be better than him saying, yeah. I really like you and I'd like to see you and let's see how this goes. A strong woman would rather, even if she likes him, would want truth so she can navigate her life and not deal with that bullshit later on.
Of this conversation because, I see it all the time and I hear my clients complaining about these things. And wonder, is it just a lot of it coming from the conditioning that boys get? You've got to man up and boys don't cry. And, we hear all of these things. And then as adults, they're still holding on to this stuff. They haven't really gone there and said, oh, okay, does this serve me? And if it does, I've got to let this go and change that. Or if it does serve me, then I keep this. So I'm finding that women are fighting because they're saying we're doing the work and we don't want to teach you. We don't want to train you.
Yes.
We save you,
And I'm cheerleading you. I agree. I agree. You hear like I'm on the same page. I have frustrations with this also. I have a boy who's not like any other boy that I have met. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's just the truth. And he's pretty confident. I was raised by a Marine, and I was raised by a man who lost his father when he was 2, so he's raised by a single mother. But he came from that generation where the neighbors would watch the children. They would call children out. There was structure, and so therefore, I guess maybe the absence of his father and being maybe in a more hyper masculine culture at the time, and then being raised by a woman kind of created some balance because I saw my father cry. My father learned, he married an alcoholic, and this woman, I have brothers who are older than me. One passed away, but a generation before me, and he ended up becoming a single father in the 50s, kind of unheard of. He cooked, he cleaned, he did all those things. He was in the military, so he was very balanced. And I have a son as well. I'm an older dad who I am the full-time parent. I do pretty much everything. So we can do it all if we lean in and choose. But one thing I wanted to put out there, because I hear this all the time, and it is boys don't cry. This whole thing, boys don't cry. Like, in fact, men will say that men are not supposed to show emotions. In fact, now it's becoming more of an excuse and a gaslighting experience because that is something more of the past. Because look at this shit we see. Even in politics, we see men react. We see men in which, like prior to that, like they would maybe contain themselves more in the masculine. We see men out of control. And men are being, I guess you say, in many ways, they are allowed to express themselves and cry. I see it. I see an overcompensation, particularly where I live, where the mothers treat their boys like how they would treat a female friend, or girls, like, they want their boys to process. So, and those boys lack confidence, structure, to where I'll just share this, and it's a generalization, and I always somehow trigger one person out there, and I think that's a good thing. And it's this, like, they might hear this and go, because how they feel about this. And yes, we're all different. Yes, there are some boys who are a little bit more feminine or a little more androgynous. I mean, I am pretty much in tune with my feminine. I mean, here I'm express myself. I'm energetic. I'm not like a stiff. And I have to tell you, most boys, teenagers, adults, and men, that if they don't have a map within themselves of where they're going, if they don't have a purpose, if they get stuck in overprocessing, in feelings and all of that, they get depressed. Those are the men you see gaming still. Those are the men who are masturbating to porn when they really wish they could be in a relationship. You do not want to see a young man lost in his emotions. And this is really throwing it out there, but look at the mass shootings in the United States. They have been by white men who felt awkward, who were, socially awkward, probably boys who could not connect, who could connect to their hearts, who felt isolated and alone and depressed. There was mental illness involved. And so it's very important that for men and young boys to connect to those emotions and to be able to take accountability for that, and then to put it into new actions and stop with the fucking excuses.
Yeah. I see it almost like a pendulum where you got on the one end, it's the don't show any emotion and, boys don't
Yeah,
cry. And then now you've got the opposite end of it where it's over processing and getting stuck
yeah,
in the healing journey with
yeah,
the mask on of spirituality and so on. But the authenticity, the responsibility is not quite there. So we've got to kind of like go from one end to the other and actually meet in the middle where we find that sense of balance.
yeah.
And would you agree? I look at all of us and say we've got both masculine and feminine as it should be, right?
Hmm.
But my thinking is that women need to have that slightly dominant feminine. The essence needs to be there, and men having the slightly dominant. So we harmonize, not balance, but harmonize the masculine and feminine within ourselves. But in
Hmm.
relation, it's about that man having that slightly dominant masculine and the woman having a slightly dominant feminine. And we come together in partnership in that way. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely. It's a dance. It's like the
Yeah.
tango.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I am in a relationship with a woman who moves into her masculine a lot. And it's been a dance also, so we don't have power struggles, because she used to attract more feminine men.
Yes.
And she recognizes that. I mean, her backstory is that, first off, her mother was an actual nun before her mother met her father. Her father was in the closet and he died of AIDS. So talk about like utter betrayal of the
Yeah.
masculine. And this she, like, it was, she didn't even know her father was gay until a nurse shared it with her, like, you know why your father's dying? And she didn't even know. And so her mother, she, reflecting back on that, she like noticed that her mother was more the one holding the container, because he was pretty outrageous. He would react, he would move into anger and so forth, for whatever reason that is. And so, she modeled that. she modeled that behavior to be the container, to be in the masculine. So this has been going on for a long time.
Yes. Yes.
And it's very important that, for women who maybe witness that, is to ask yourself, is this who I really am? Is this my essence? Or is it a survival mechanism? Is it a survival mechanism that I witnessed, that I'm now modeling? And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's more, but what would be my authentic expression? And what areas in my life right now can hold this container for me to step into space, such as it might be going to the spa, it might be getting a massage, it might be where you're with a woman who's actually stronger than you and you felt seen and heard. That can create that balance. I'm a pretty masculine man, and I hold a container for a lot of people, a lot of things. I can handle a lot. But this is what's funny about this. It's not because I'm that typical masculinity that you might see in baby boomers who seem pissed off about everything. And I know that's a generalization, but we see a
Yeah.
lot of the baby boomer masculine. It's just like there's this, like, and
Yeah.
my God, like we were so imbalanced. I'd also know that like diet and other things that like the people prior to us looked a lot older because there was not that balance, that flow in both men and women. And so we need that. It's very important for us to remember that a man's relationship to his feminine, hear that, his relationship to his feminine is going to be a reflection with his children and in his partner, his like intimate partner, or even business associates. It's very important. So I am not masculine because I'm rigid and I just push my emotions down. It's that I've practiced going, what am I feeling? Am I taking pause? Like even right now, it's like for me, it's 6:36 a.m. I probably sound a little more stressed because I am still somewhat waking up. And I'm noticing, I'm like, I wonder how intense I sound. I'm aware of it. I'm like, huh. And the coffee is just kind of kicking in, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm working a little hard. But that's my nervous system. It's not who I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I haven't done my morning practices, my rituals. I do breath work.
Okay.
I do little things to kind of tune in. I sometimes will journal, but I'll connect to nature. I live in a beautiful place. Literally have about 25 rose bushes. I smell them and just take them in. Like do you remember right before we started this call, I was like trying to get perfect. I was in the
Yes.
masculine. Yeah. Yeah. Cass saw that. I was, I got to change my light because
Yeah.
right now
Get the
it's a
lighting
weird
right.
lighting because it's still a little bit dark. And then I pulled out my tuning fork and hit this. I go, okay, here I am. Here I am. So
Yes.
it's being able to
Grounded.
see within. And if
Yes.
men could do this, it would be amazing. But I imagine like women are going to hear this or watch this and go, but where are they? Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll start a dating app. I don't know. Like I'm leading a men's group right now, and the men who I work with are amazing guys. Obviously, if they're
Yes.
reaching out to me, they're a little bit deeper, you
Yeah.
know, they're a little bit more progressive or open to it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I've
Yes.
joked about it. Like I'm like, maybe I will create like a conscious app that is for men to really show up. And I say it when I say this, if I were to do it, I would do it right because I've been in groups where it's led by spiritual men and they're still immature. They cannot
Yes.
handle feedback. It's the same shit that shows up. So it's
Yes.
everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
that's the
everywhere.
mask. Yeah, the spiritual
Yeah.
mask. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that that app would be a hit because there are so many women that are saying, where are these men that are living consciously, that are self-aware, that are willing to be vulnerable, but not be, sobbing all the time. So the
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah,
Um,
so a man who's not in touch with his feelings right now, he would take what you just said out of context and project onto you. Are you saying I cannot be, in my emotions? No, Cass is not saying that. But what I want to direct you to is who reacted? You did. What are you
yeah,
feeling? I would
Yeah.
turn it in and go, why would I have a reaction to this? To
Yeah.
what is my relationship truly to my emotions? To is there something I'm trying to hide? And until that's revealed to yourself, it'll come out, it'll be revealed when you have a couple shots of tequila. It'll be revealed when your woman confronts you and says, like, you've been checked out a lot. Like when I'm talking to you, looking at your phone, you'll interpret that as I'm wrong. Once again, someone's telling me what's wrong about me, and then you're connected to unconsciously to your dad telling you you're, a piece of shit or something. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why all of us have to do the inner work. That's what it's called, doing the shadow work.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
used to react. I used to
Yeah.
react. And I've been through that process. And I used to blame it on my father because my father reacted. Or I'd say, well, my father literally was a master sergeant. But what it really was is that my father demanded respect also, and he did get that. And what it
Mm.
was is that if I felt disrespected, I would react. That's what it was. But
Yeah.
no, maybe someone wasn't just respecting me. I was feeling disrespected. I am the
Yeah.
feeler. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am collapsing in my heart. I am the one creating the thought that I'm not being respected. Therefore, I'm disrespecting myself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because you wouldn't be triggered if it's not true for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
I'm really interested in the group, the mentorship group that you have with men, because from what I find is that the men that do this deep transformation work,
I
they
know what you're going to say already.
shifts, the changes that it just blows my mind. I see them when they start a program, and I see as they go deeper, as they do the shadow work, as they come into their true authentic power, and I see this huge transformation, and I feel I want to go and grab all the men in the world that are in their wounded energy and say, come, let's do this together. And I think that's what you're doing now with this mentorship group, and it's just such crucially important work. And I think that is the thing that's going to bridge the gap, that 70%.
Well, well here what you just said that Kaz, and I know that like you said I want to grab the wounded man. What's happening is that a lot of the stronger women are doing that, and therefore, unfortunately, it enables them. Once again, your mommy holding
Yes.
them, and it's like my you'll see like I put it out there like a snippet of the call, and I was happy that this young man was allowed me to show it. But in the ending of our call, he's a people pleaser. He started saying, we man, this is going to be hard. We.
Yes.
And about 10 seconds into it, I said, Stephen, speak for yourself. Come
Yes,
from
I
an I
saw that.
statement. And
Yeah.
he did. And so if I don't see a lot of women communicating to men that way, and if they were, they might get more defensive
Mm.
to the or the man might shrink and it's like mommy taking care of him. There's a different experience when you have a healthy, strong man calling him in to his strength, because that's what I did. Even with the two boys that, my partner has a boy that's a year and a half younger than my boy. Like she says, I'd rather refer to you when it comes to talking to them. And we had a pretty deep talk last night, and it became comical. And she said, like, you just know how to make it like light and funny. Like, and it's pretty direct stuff. Like we're talking about stuff that would probably could hurt, not hurt a boy's feelings, but if it was shared in a way that he was hypersensitive, or shared in a way that he couldn't be emotionally resilient, that energy could
Mm.
be picked up by him to where he sees it as trauma or something destructive or
Yeah.
a character attack and so forth. I'll just give you an example. It doesn't, like, I'm open to this. I can handle any criticism, or if people say, I knew who you were talking about. But um, it was about that. Um, why not? So their boy, who's about to turn 10, still sleeps with a father in bed.
Uh,
Yes. You, yeah. And yeah, okay.
right.
Yeah, and every woman
Yeah.
hearing this is like, oh,
Yeah.
and that impacts his confidence,
Yeah.
uh, being attached to things, clinginess, like not maturing,
Yeah.
referring to his mother to do things for him, like all these things.
Yeah.
And it's shared by experts. Now, here's the thing. We've tried to communicate this to the father, okay? But the father's adamant. He gets defensive. And yet what he doesn't realize is I'm not saying you're a bad father, you're an asshole, or I know better. I'm basically saying, look at the evidence. Look at how it's showing up in your child. Look what's happening. Now,
Yes.
can you own that? Even if it makes you feel bad, don't make it
Yes.
about yourself. Make it about your child. Okay? But he's lacks the awareness about that. So a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we watched a movie which it was the Hunger Games, and there was a scary part in there, and my girlfriend's son like got scared, like he was afraid when he went home, and the conversation came up about my son, who's Max, and he said, I noticed that Ray and Max, um, they don't get scared. To Ray and Max, he started saying, I don't know men like them. I'm not, he started like kind of be a little bit bummed out because he is a little bit more emotional. And so the conversation I had with him last night was I had the clinical like outline of what happens to a child when they sleep too long with their parents. And I shared it in a way that wasn't calling them out. I said, this is a conversation that we have had with your father. And I said that if you really want to own yourself, if you want to be accountable for yourself, these could be some of the reasons here. Like, if anything, we want you to be able to grow up. And I asked him questions like, what would it feel like if you were able to contain your emotions? He said, I'd feel great. I'm like, what would it feel like if like you would feel confidence? He said, I'd feel great. I said, well, that's why we're trying to help you. And so I said, you might have to be the one that says, I want my own room. You might need to be the one who's independent, says, I'm grown up. No, I'm going to be in my own room. And so I'm giving him an invitation. I'm not calling him out. I'm basically giving him that rites of passage. Yeah, like, like kids who still afraid to sleep with it being dark, like while you might feel bad as a parent, I'm gonna say particularly like if it's a boy, that's you feeling bad. Imagine
Yes.
him being with a girlfriend at 17 years old and he says, we need to leave the lights on. I know most women are not thinking about their young boys dating. But
Yeah.
again, I mentioned earlier in this, I always think of the future. I always think of like, what could this lead to? And you don't want a child who has all these weird idiosyncrasies to where like they're hard to be around. They're not relatable. We want them to be adaptable. We want them to be able to acclimate to new things and change, and so forth. And so it's about connection and also reframing and then put it into action. It's being into the feminine and then moving into the masculine. And that's for both boys and girls.
Mm.
You know?
I think, it's like immature parents who are not taking responsibility, not looking ahead, not looking at the best interests of the child. This has led to the society that we live in today, where as adults, we've got to now reparent ourselves.
Mhm.
Put it and say, okay, this is what happened. Now, this child, as he grows up and he has a girlfriend, like you said, he's 17, he has a girlfriend. And then is he going to say, I've been sleeping with dad till I was 12 or 14, or when does it stop?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think children need to find that who they are. We need to provide the safety for them to explore
Hmm.
to the world, have these adventures, but they feel safe when they know you're there. Like you said in the beginning, you're watching them. So they feel
Hmm.
the safety of that. We're providing the safety
Hmm.
for you to go and find yourself. Uh, yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting one. Um, with the men in your group now, what are the common wounds that you see showing up when they're starting a program like yours?
So first off, I just started this up because I got frustrated with what was going on there. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, and I could step into a men's group with hundreds of men and be able to talk. Because I do have other interests, other things I'm doing. And not just that, you have, again, it's been like pulling teeth to create these containers. So I created a free mentorship where men show up twice a month. And uh, we'll see how this goes. And but the men who are showing up are people pleasers to one man, was talking about like that he's already going through a divorce and he's been too much in his head and he definitely was emotional. But these men who typically show up are more ready than most men out there. That's what I have to say.
Yeah.
But it's kind of what you're sharing, where one man talked about, like, or two of them, how their women don't really trust him because they're like the Mr. Nice Guy. They say yes to everything. So
Yes,
they're
yes,
literally reading that book by Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which teaches men like this who kind of have covert ways to manipulate women, like feel sorry for them,
yes,
to yeah, to not really owning their sexuality, like being in a friend zone when they really want to be with this woman, and
yes.
it's to teach men to be more authentic. And this is not to shame any mothers out there. I know everyone's trying to do their best, but a lot of these men have come from women who've been wounded, like sexual abuse, to where they try to turn their boy into a nice boy. Like they don't
Yes.
want them to express their sexuality, or when they maybe are rough playing it. And let
Yes.
me tell you about rough playing. Rough playing, when you become an adult, like an adult male, is, if it's integrated, it's where you know your edge. You know you can hurt someone, but you hold back. You know you have that energy, but you know how to direct it. And
Mhm.
so it's important for boys to be able to move into that experience. I wrestle my boys. It's pretty funny. And they love it. They get excited. They get that energy out. Boys need recess. They need to run
Yes.
around. They have a lot of energy. And if you push that down, it turns into gaming. It turns them to masturbation. It turns into depression. It turns into mental illness. It turns into, like I have seen more teenage boys than girls be crippled because they were raised that way. Like their mother stopped them from touching the hot stove. So therefore, for the rest of their life, they're afraid to put themselves out there because
Yes.
their mother projected onto them their fragility. Like you, oh, yeah, I got to be careful. Are you gonna be okay? Like I
Yes.
remember witnessing it was at a kid's party and they were like playing soccer, and this boy would always have these meltdowns, and I saw the conflict with his father and his mother, and he walks off the field and it's like a birthday party and he's crying. Nothing really happened. Like really, it wasn't a physical injury. It was just like him being emotional. And the mother's like, "You're going to be okay. Tell me what you feel." And the father was saying, "Get out there and play. Get out there. Let that go, and so forth." And yeah, it's
Yeah.
when we're teaching children today that words hurt, even words online, we're doing a disservice for who they are to become. Because while someone in your face can call you a name, if you really know yourself, it can't hurt you. You can still be triggered a little bit. And again, people who haven't worked on this, they'll go, "That's because you're a psychopath or you're disconnected." No, it's like, that's why even where I live, I can't believe this happens. And my son's, so first off, I have a lot of back east roots. And so we're very much into self-deprecation. Like, for example, if we mess up on something, we might say, "Oh my God, I sucked. Oh my God." And I've been around women in this area where my son has joked about him not being able to do something, and then they would go, "Oh my God, no, you're fine. You're gonna be okay." Like almost as if he was feeling bad about himself, literally, rather than he wasn't taking himself so seriously. And if you guard your children like that, particularly boys, those boys are going to be defensive in their relationships. They're not going to be able to handle a no. They're going to feel everything like a boundary as a rejection.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's important
yes,
for boys, for all children, to feel some level of emotional discomfort. They need that. They
yes,
need that to be able to handle life. What we now see and witness is the opposite of that. I'm okay. So I'm not talking about any particular side, and it's not judgment, but I'm shocked when I see people on, and I push, like not like, or I don't want to see it. I just scroll quickly when I see these videos, and sometimes people have shared them with me, where people are going into tantrums and recording it, screaming, crying, on their phones. And for me, I I would never do that because I wouldn't know how that would be attractive. I like while some other people will make fun of that, I see it as a call out for help,
yes,
a call out for help.
yeah, yeah,
And if you're that lost to where you're having to do that, or you lack the awareness of how this could be perceived, and this is not helping you, you need support. And particularly the cyberbullying. My son already has created a YouTube account, and he turns 11 in July. And of course, he has only kids responding. But I have allowed him to see some of the negative comments on my YouTube channel or in general. I said, look what this person's saying about me. And my son will say, they don't even know you. I said, yeah, I know. Is that,
yeah,
or he'll say, like, have you ever met them? I said, no. He's like, and so I'm already kind of desensitizing him or creating
yes,
awareness that, yeah, like Max, I said on social media, like sometimes it becomes like therapy for people.
yeah.
So,
I'm see.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, one of the worst advice I've heard a father give his son is whenever there's an argument, just agree. Just,
Oh God.
that's,
That's like
the
the Will
worst.
Ferrell
Yeah.
character in all his movies. Will Ferrell, he plays like the nice guy. Okay, like whatever.
So
No.
it's like, and I think that's what it is that leads to these kind of armchair critics and things because they're not in touch with who they are, with what their emotions are, and it's not always about the love and the joy and the happiness and the peace. We also have to be in touch with those parts of ourselves that are in shame, that are in fear, that are guilt, that are, in a state of apathy at times. And I think, when being real means we understand that all of it is a part of us and
Hmm.
be to go there and look at it and sit with it and understand it and then transcend it after you've taken the message from these emotions. Um, so, Ray, you are in a fairly new relationship now, right? How is this relationship different from the past relationships you've been in?
You really want to go there?
In what you know,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yes,
So,
I do.
so we've been together for 3.5 years. So
Okay.
by the way, and you can all judge me and create your narratives about me. This is the first woman that this is the first time me living with someone since 2004,
Okay.
besides my son. And I feel my son kind of got me used to that again. Because my son slept in my bed up until he was 3, 4 years old. And then we slowly he would go back to his space and whatever. So, I'm putting it out there like very close to my son,
Yes.
very affectionate. We still hug each other. And by the way, my Marine father would kiss me on the lips. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're talking about a man who was in
Yes.
World War II,
Yeah.
the Korean War, 3 tours in Vietnam. So I come from a very affectionate family and affectionate men. So I'm very affectionate with my son. So And I'm not trying to avoid your question now. Um, it is amazing. And first off, it is because maybe it's because we're both older. That's one thing. Our children have helped ground us, and we both have been in personal development for over 2 decades.
Right.
That's the and when I say that, because you meet people who say they've been in it and they're doing a lot of
Yes.
spiritual bypassing still.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, Nicole takes utter personal responsibility. To the degree to remember I told you the people pleasing tendencies. There's been times when something had happened and then I would get an apology and she would like try to own all the stuff. But because I don't want her to, and I had to be accountable, I would say, no, no, that was my shit too. It wasn't just you. And in time she recognized like, yeah, like that even shown up and taking personal responsibility was like to the degree where she was trying to own too much, like a lot of women do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yes. Right.
yeah. And so, and then she's also been manipulated by these men. And oh no, like I don't, yeah, I come from this school of thought, and I'm always saying this. This is going to like associate to me to something, probably something negative, if I bring up Clint Eastwood. So, in Unforgiven or movies like that, you'll see these cowboys where if the other man doesn't have a gun, they'll throw him a gun. Like they want to make it fair. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like I'm a gun owner and I'm thinking about violence, but I am cut from that cloth where that I would never want to have an advantage over somebody. I would
Yeah.
never want to
Mm.
have that. I would never want to use my wisdom or consciousness to you know to outsmart someone. That would be all ego. I would want an equal partnership. And that
Yeah.
would mean that I would have to show up with my insecurities fully as well. And so that's how we are in a relationship. And she thinks I'm a master at a lot of things. And I have mastered a lot of things, but I'm working with a new thing. And that is so strange. It's kind of evolved, but it has to do with integrity. I'm all about integrity. To the degree I'll stress myself out about it, where it maybe becomes performative because I was raised by a Marine. And it has created so much rigidity in my body as well. And so my dad was born in 1925 and I was born in 1969. So we're pretty far apart in generations. And so I was raised the same way baby boomers were.
Mm.
So I recognize that rigidity in myself. And so when her and I are together, I'm into action. I take care, I provide to do whatever I can to the degree I forget about, like I might get a massage, I might get acupuncture. However, in real time, I'm still in that performance sometimes. And she'll see that in my snippiness, or I seem not happy. I don't seem present because I'm the opposite. I'm really attempting to do a lot of things. Like, for example, I started this men's group while I'm moving two families back east, while I'm also starting another business. I can keep telling you other things I'm doing at the same time because I have the emotional capacity to do it. However, I also have to own where, like, when it's shown up in my body as rigidity and I'm acting like a baby boomer. Ah! So I have to, I'm still a work in progress and a forever student of life as well.
I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of the time people feel if you're a coach, then your life must be perfect. Your relationships must be perfect. I've had thrown at me a few times. And I just love the journey of just, growing, expanding, and finding deeper aspects of yourself, aligning more with your soul. It's just such an amazing journey. Thank you
Yes.
for sharing, so openly. Ray, this is a question I ask all of my guests. If there was one message that you could leave, that when it is repeated enough times, it becomes the legacy that you leave behind for humanity, what would that message be?
In moments of stress and moments of uncertainty, regardless of what we're facing and what we're looking at outside of ourselves, just ask this question. In this moment, am I being the best version of myself? In this moment, am I being the best version of myself? In this moment, am I being the best version of myself? And even, for example, my son, like people like, I know parents will say, well, Papa Bear, Mama Bear came out of me, and we react, and it's justified because I'm a Mama Bear or Papa Bear. And I get those sensitive moments, particularly just say if your child is being bullied or something like that. But again, your child is witnessing you and responding to your nervous system and shaping their sense of self by being around you. So it's not to disregard the challenges that you might be facing or looking at. It's still bringing it back and asking yourself, am I being the best version of myself? And that's to myself also. If I'm in the kitchen cleaning, I'm doing things, I'm taking care of stuff, and I'm stressed, am I being the best version of myself? No, because my actions don't define me.
Oh, now you know why I said you're the male version of me, because that's a question I ask myself. Ray, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, the wisdom that you've shared today. We're going to leave all of your links in the show notes to your social media and for your book and all of that in there. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they can do that, and I hope they do. Thank you. Thank you very much for your
Thank you very
time.
much. This is fun.